When NBA fans think of the most overlooked players of all time, many immediately go to the stars that were drafted in the late rounds. Manu Ginobili is a popular pick, Draymond Green as well. Isaiah Thomas has the heartwarming story of being the last pick and shortest player of the draft, and still finding success. Nikola Jokic is still building his case for the top spot. They're all fun, neat, and endearing stories. They, however, pale in comparison to a different talent who went completely undrafted, then went on to become one of the best defenders of his era and end the Shaq-Kobe Dynasty. The one guy who might take the cake when it comes to being overlooked, he's even occasionally passed up in some of these polls, is Ben Wallace. The burly center went undrafted in 1996, which usually means a future working at an office or blue-collar job, and at absolute best, an insanely short professional career. But Wallace worked his tail off and will go down forever as an NBA champion, a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year, and one of the best rebounders of all time. Here is the story of a dude who admittedly stood 6'7" in socks and became a shot-blocking, board-grabbing, and overall dominant setter. Let's fire it up from the top. Wallace was born on September 10th, 1974 in Whitehall, Alabama. By the time he came into this world, he already had 9 siblings, and 8 of them were boys. For those of you that have older brothers out there, you already know what it's like to try to play sports with them. And most of you probably have 1 or 2, maybe 3. Imagine having 8. Wallace used to claim that he'd have to hustle and dive for every ball if he even wanted to touch on the playground growing up. Being older brothers, the elder Wallace boys would never pass to young Ben. So he's transformed into a scrapper, and that mentality never changed. Essentially, we can thank the Wallace clan for being volume-shooting ball hogs for Ben developing the style of play that made him famous, rich, and gave him a cool story. And Wallace wasn't just a scrapper on the court. He knew to achieve his dream of reaching the NBA, he would have to do whatever jobs he could to make enough money to attend camps and train. One time he actually ended up briefly being a barber in order to pay a $50 camp fee. Yeah, this guy right here. Wallace would end up at the famed Cuyahoga Community College after high school. There it became obvious he was too good for community college basketball, averaging 24 points, 17 rebounds, and 7 blocks. That's right, 7 blocks per game. I don't care if it was a community college. Heck, I wouldn't care if it was a game against my boss's 4-year-old niece. 7 blocks a game is a lot. Big Ben moved on to Virginia Union, a Division II school. Despite being a D2 first-team All-American, Wallace received little to no attention from scouts. When the draft came around, Wallace was not on a single NBA draft board. They were concerned with his size at the center position. He was listed at 6'9", as behemoth 7-footers dominated the league. Remember, this was before the small ball era in the NBA, as teams would go out of their way to purposely draft bad basketball prospects simply because they were tall, and added points if their resting face was set to brooding. So Ben was forced to take a free agent deal with the Washington Wizards, and began to grow his name. After coming dangerously close to being cut in training camp, he squeaked out a roster spot. Soon, Wizards fans began to appreciate this underdog with a mean streak in him. Wallace might have been short for his position, but he never played like it. After one more stop in Orlando, Wallace was traded to the Detroit Pistons, where he would blossom into the player we know today. In his first 2 years in the Motor City, Wallace really began to turn heads. Between 2000 and 2002, he averaged 13.1 rebounds and just under 3 blocks. With little to no offensive output, 7.2 points per game, Wallace became a key contributor on a playoff contender. But even though he won his first Defensive Player of the Year in 2002, the Pistons had failed to make much noise in the playoffs, failing to traverse past the conference semifinals. In 2002-03, both Wallace and the team took a step forward. Ben led the league in rebounding with 15.4 per game and won his second consecutive Defensive Player of the Year award. The Pistons made it to the conference finals before being dispatched by the Nets. Even after the loss, however, the world knew the Pistons and Ben Wallace would be a threat for years to come. Wallace stepped up his scoring in 2003-04. He upped his average to 9.5 points per game, which set a career high at that point. Unfortunately, Von Artest broke his streak of Defensive Player of the Year awards. Perhaps Ben took it personally because these two were not exactly friends during their careers. Anyway, Wallace helped the Pistons to the finals, where the biggest spotlight and matchup awaited, Shaquille O'Neal, who had 4 inches and 50 pounds on Wallace, and was easily the most dominant big man in the game. That was Ben's matchup. This wasn't so much David vs. Goliath as it was David vs. Godzilla on roids and icy hot. Shaq had been unstoppable in the Lakers' past 3 finals appearances. He had destroyed every defender that had been thrown at him. Shaq put up 38 a game against Rick Smits, a guy who was 7'4". Dikembe Mutombo stood no chance of stopping Shaq from averaging 33 per game. But the Diesel had never faced a defender like Ben Wallace. Wallace gave Shaq trouble all series and held him to his lowest finals points per game in a Laker uniform. The rest, as historians like to say, was history, as the Pistons upset the Lakers and Wallace completed the long road from undrafted player to NBA champion. By the end of his career, Wallace was a 4-time All-Star, led the league in rebounding twice and blocks once, and made the NBA All-Defensive Teams a whopping 7 times. So when you tell your friend you got a shot at playing in the league and they laugh, just show them this video. If Ben Wallace can lock up Shaq and beat 7-footers to rebounds, anything is possible. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Frank Smith. As always, you can follow me at FMS_Frank Smith and follow ClutchPoints at ClutchPoints. Check out all of our mini documentaries on Facebook, YouTube, and IGTV. For this video, I want you guys to let me know in the comments who your favorite player of that legendary Pistons team was. Me personally, I'm going with Rip Hamilton, but I gotta say Chauncey Billups is a close second. Thank you guys. Until next time.